Let's have a look at refinishing this old teak swim grid here that we have. This is off a Mastercraft. Customer has asked for us to refinish it. We've had it inside all winter, so it's nice and dry. We're going to be using, this is Interlux Perfection Plus. Just zoom in on that. This is a two-part polyurethane varnish. It's much more durable than a single part varnish. And it's, other than the mixing ratios, it's very easy to use. Refinishing a teak swim grid is not a difficult procedure. You can do it at home. Just like anything to do with refinishing, the prep work is everything. How well you sand it, how well you clean it, and in the case of teak, because it's an oily wood, how well you degrease it before you apply the finish. So we're gonna, for this process, I'm gonna take off the brackets here at the back, just so that it's easier when I'm working on the bottom side of it. And on my way, we're going to sand it. We're going to start with, I'll probably start with a 120, 150 on top, and then a 220 grit, finishing with a 320 grit probably. On the bottom side, I might start with an 80 grit just to go a little bit faster, before working down to the 320 as well. But the bottom side finish isn't, it's not on display. Nobody sees it. We just want to refinish it to seal it all up. So, let's see how this all works out for us. That's using the Interlux Perfection Plus. Okay, so I've done all the sanding here now. I'm going to give it one more 320 on the top side after I've done a little bit of work here. While I was sanding, I see that we've got a couple of little cracks here where the brackets mount. We got one there, I think we can see, yeah. Pretty nasty one there, and that's where the brackets mount, that it holds it on the back of the boat. So I've mixed up a bit of West System epoxy. This is the other one here. I've mixed up some West System epoxy, and I'm just going to squeeze that down into the cracks. Clamp it there overnight. And we'll finish this off tomorrow. So this is the West System epoxy is really nice. We use it a lot. I'm using the fast hardener, and they have these handy pumps, so you don't have to measure it. You just one pump of this one. This is part B, and one pump of this one. It's already measured out, and we see what we're looking at there. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure it was in the camera. These are one pump of each, and you've got the right ratio. Mix it all up. If you need more, 5 pumps each. But it's great stuff. Awesome for a job like this. So I'm just going to put some epoxy in there, and then I'll clamp it and hold it tight overnight while the epoxy cures, and we'll start putting some varnish on it in the morning. Back again. We've finished sanding our swim grid here, I've sanded both sides of it. I glued up the cracks that we had here next to our screw holes, where the mounting brackets mount up. I glued that up with epoxy last night, sanded it off a little bit here this morning before we prep for our first coat. Now, the first thing we do with teak and oily wood is degrease it. I've already done that with this, but I thought I'd just show you how it's done. You need to let it dry a little bit afterwards. So you use a 2-rag technique for degreasing. You wet one rag with the 2316N reducer thinner, wet it, wipe it onto an area, and then with a clean rag immediately wipe it off over and over again to do the whole panel, and then let it dry thoroughly. I did this about half an hour ago, so it dries pretty quick. This evaporates really quickly, so you can only do a small section at a time. So that's all done. And then for our first coat of Perfection Plus, they say to thin it 25% with the thinners. So I'm going to mix up a little bit here, and we'll put some on. Okay, I've mixed up our Perfection Plus varnish. When you're mixing the varnish, you want to stir it, don't shake it. You don't want to get a lot of air bubbles in there when you're doing varnish. You want to do it nice and gentle. Get too many air bubbles in there, you'll get a textured surface. This is the back side, so it's not that important, but best practices. I haven't thinned this yet. There is an induction time for a 2-part paint. Let it stand for 10 minutes after mixing it. That gets the chemical reaction happening before you start applying your product. So our 10 minutes is up now, and I'm going to reduce this with some thinner for the first coat so it really soaks in. And we'll put it on. Now, just as a point of reference, as I said at the beginning of this video, it's all about prep work. The better finish, the better the job you want, the more prep work you want to put into it. I've got about 5 hours of sanding and detail work on this so far to get it up to the standard that I want, and I haven't even started applying the varnish yet. So that'll give you an idea of how much sanding you need to do and the quality of finish. On the top side, when I get to that, I'm actually going to sand it again after before I put the varnish on there. First, I'm just going to seal up the bottom so that I can flip it over and then worry about the top that's visible and make that a really nice finish. So, you know, I may get a little run here and there around the edge that I'll want to sand off and things like that. So about 5 hours of sanding top and bottom so far, and then I gave it a degrease, 2-rag system, mixed up my my varnish, and I'm just going to reduce it by 25% so that it soaks in. The reason I didn't put the reducer in earlier for the induction time is because it evaporates really quickly, and it would have evaporated out while I was waiting for the induction time of the chemical process of the 2 parts. So this has made it a nice, very watery mixture there that is going to soak in real nice. Give us a good bond. I'm stirring very gently, being careful not to introduce any air bubbles in there. there. Now for the back side, I'm just going to use disposable chip brushes. If the odd hair falls off and it's not quite a perfect finish, it's okay. The whole point of the reason I'm doing the back side is to seal it up and protect it. The top side, I'll use a proper varnish brush and tip off and everything like that. But for here, we're just we're focused on just sealing it up. So I'm just using an inexpensive chip brush, disposable brush. And there we go. First coat on. We'll let that cure. Let's touch up a couple drips here. Let that set. The recoat time, I think, was 6 hours to 2 days. I'll double check that on the data sheet. If I can, I will give it a second coat at the end of the day today. I'll just see what the window is for that, and we'll go from there. Okay, I'm back to my swim grid project here. Had to leave it for a couple of weeks while I got caught up on some other work. We're kind of right in the middle of our, at the beginning of our crazy spring commission season, so juggling jobs around all the time. I have got a couple of coats on the back to seal it all up. I'm not too concerned about the finish of the bottom of it, the back side of it, because it's pretty much just an inch above the water. I just wanted to seal it up. So that's all. Flip it up here a little bit, give you a quick look there. So it's all sealed up and finished up nice. And now we're on the, I'll adjust the camera here. Now we're on the, onto the top side, the important finish side. So I have sanded this with multiple levels. I started with an 80 grit to break through the really bad oxidized stuff, the real gray stuff. And then I've worked my way down to a 320. I've blown it all off, blown all the dust off with compressed air. And then I did the finish sanding on it yesterday. And I also gave it a degrease yesterday because the teak is an oily wood. But I'm going to give it another quick degrease here before we go, before I start putting the clear coat on it. So we use a two rag method, one to wipe off, one to wipe on. I'm not sure if the bottom of my can is dirty at all, so as tempting as it is to put the can on there, I don't want to transfer anything nasty onto it that might interfere with my paint sticking. So we wet one rag with the thinner. Like I said, I did this yesterday. This is just going to be a quick one. So we wet it down and then wipe it off with a dry rag, one section at a time. I'm not using a lot here. Yesterday I really soaked it to pull the oils out of it. Today I'm just doing a light one because I want it to dry pretty quick so I can get a coat on today. Just doing a section at a time. Wipe on, wipe off. This is to degrease the wood. It's an oily wood. We want to take the oil out of the wood. And then I'm going to let this sit for half an hour or so to just let the last of the solvents dry out of it. While it's drying, I will mix up the 3 parts for my first coat of the Interlux Perfection Plus Clear that we're putting on here. We're going to, the first coat's going to be thinned with 25% thinner, the 2316 reducing solvent, to help it penetrate and soak into the wood on its first coat. And that'll give it a really good bond and keep it from lifting off. So I'm going to mix up some clear coat, and I'll be back in a little bit. Now I've mixed up my part A and part B of my Perfection Plus, and I've also added 25% thinner to it for the first coat. I'm using a disposable brush for the first coat, just to save up on cleanup time. When I get into subsequent coats, I will use a higher quality brush and tip it off to keep a smooth finish. But for this one, we just want to get some of this on there and get it soaking in. Put some cardboard on the floor to protect the floor. So that's our first coat. Okay, here we are. First coat cured overnight. This has been about 24 hours since I did the first coat. That was thinned out 25% with some thinner, so it's soaked in real nice. You can see it's already bringing the color out real nice. So before I do the second coat here, I'm going to just scuff it up very lightly with some Scotch-Brite. This is some red Scotch-Brite. You could use 320 or 400 grit sandpaper and just scuff over it lightly by hand. The objective is to just knock any little imperfections off the top, take the high spots off. We're not sanding it, we're just taking any high spots off, feeling for any bits of dust that might have fallen in overnight or while it was drying. I felt something there. I'll just give that a little extra rub there. We're not trying to sand through the finish here. We're just trying to take any high spots off. A couple of bubbles on this plank here. This just helps the second coat lay smoother and flatter. There we go. I've got a clean microfiber cloth here. I'm just going to wipe the dust off, which should be very minimal because I wasn't sanding it. I was just taking the high spots off. Yep. Now for the second coat here, I'm using a red tree badger brush, specifically for varnish. I've mixed up my my two parts here about 10 minutes ago. You want to let it's got an induction time. You want to let it sit for 10 minutes. And let's lay a second coat on. I should mention that this stuff is pretty powerful smell. You want to do this with lots of ventilation. It looks like I'm in the workshop here, which I am, but I've got the front and back doors open and the fan going for ventilation. So don't do it in an enclosed shop. It'd probably kill you. Certainly knock you out. And there you have it, coat number 2. And here's our finished product. This is 4 coats in total. The first coat was reduced 25%, and then the next 3 were put on full strength, full mix, not reduced at all. I didn't record all 3 coats. I just did the first one there for you. Same process in between though, just a quick scuff with some Scotch-Brite to just take the little high spots off, the bits of dust that settled in it while it was drying and things like that, and then lay the clear on. You can see it's got a beautiful gloss to it. It actually looks like it's still wet. I finished it sort of 4 days ago, I guess, so it's good and cured now. I left 24 hours between coats, which is sort of the recommended for the temperature we were in. There's actually a recoating window If you leave it, I think it was 3 days, 36 hours between coats, you need to sand it with 320 again so that it'll bite, but within that 3-day window you don't even need to sand it. I like to just hit it with the Scotch-Brite, like I said, to just knock the high spots off, and that gives me a nice smooth flat finish. You know, there's still a little texture there from the grain and so forth, but I think that's turned out pretty darn nice. Let's put it on the boat and we'll have a closer look at it.